All right. Brent, are you there?
Yeah, Joe, can you hear me now?
I can, sir. I can. Welcome to the Social Enterprise webinar.
Love it,
Brent, why don't you,
man.
yeah, what are we going to talk about today, buddy?
So I think today we should chat a little bit about what's going on around us with the social entrepreneurship revolution that's happening. Probably a pretty good idea to talk about what we do and maybe talk about some of the things that we're seeing out there in terms of like trends, in terms of different business models and impact models and things like that. And then it would be awesome really to kind of talk about what's driving the whole thing with the kind of Gen Y movement. Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect to me. Sounds like something that you know quite a bit about. So why don't you jump in and give us a little history? I always love hearing your story, Brent. So
Uh,
jump right in.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, and vice versa. My story to be a social entrepreneur kind of comes from being a reformed commodities trader, right? I chased the money for money's sake for several years outside of college. Started a business that was sole purpose was just to try to make as much money as quick as possible, and we did. And at the age of 23, closed a big $1 million plus deal, and on paper, I'm a millionaire. But it was one of the more unfulfilling moments of my life, and it made me realize that happiness isn't rooted in the amount of zeros after your bank account. It's an important part of it, but a sense of purpose in life and mission, and what you really care about is really what matters. And so when the economy collapsed in 2009, I started a company called Roost. And the whole purpose of Roost is the world's online marketplace to discover and shop from the coolest and sexiest brands that give back. And for every member who joins, Roost will feed an American in need. We literally donate a meal for every member who joins. One member, one meal. And in early 2009, I set out on a mission to prove to the world that you can make a difference in the world and make a profit, and that's not a bad thing. And we have grown the company. We've had hundreds of thousands of people come and join the movement. And we work with the coolest and best brands that all have integrated cause into their business model. And we are just very passionate about helping entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs inside companies and everyday people realize that they can make a difference in the world through everyday shopping or everyday business. And so from a high level, man, that's kind of the story. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what got you into the social enterprise world, and we can kind of dive in deeper to both of our journeys during the conversation.
Well, yeah, I'd love to share. You probably remember I won $20 million in the lottery and then was struck by lightning, so I gave it all away. No, that would be great though. No, yeah, I actually, like yourself, I got into business for a lot of different reasons. I started in apparel and got into clothing, and started a company that did fulfillment and logistics services for other apparel brands, more or less by accident. And I was having fun, so it means to an end. Along the way, though, we were very fortunate. We were able to build a brand that grew pretty rapidly. My first real exposure to social enterprise was a brand that I'm sure most people that are familiar with social enterprise know, and that's Tom's Shoes. I met Blake McCoskey when he had a couple hundred pairs of shoes in his apartment in Venice, and this crazy idea and this crazy story. And my business partner and I, Darren at the time, brought them into our fulfillment house and helped them get up off the ground and launch. And it was really very powerful for me to see what one person's idea could turn into over time. This was something that, again, I think most people, just think isn't possible. They don't think they can make a difference. They think that the way it is the way it is, and that you have to be a billionaire to actually affect change.
Right.
And that was the first real proof for me. So a few years later down the line, I had like a pretty crazy year where a lot of personal things affected me, and it gave me, much like yourself, that extra push to say, what am I really doing that matters? What do I really care about?
Right.
At the end of the day, what am I, if I die tomorrow, what am I going to really care about? And it was at that time that coincidentally, as I was going through that personal deep dive, Tom's announced that they were delivering their millionth pair of shoes. And again, that was just this big wow moment. It was like, wow, this was somebody's crazy idea in the living room 5 years ago, and now they've affected 1 million people. why aren't we all doing this? And
Mm-hmm.
much like we started looking into the statistics and trying to see how possible it was and what types of change could happen through consumerism. And it was amazing. I'm sure you and I both can regurgitate and will a lot of the statistics and facts surrounding social enterprise, but specifically how Gen Y, how there's like 85% of people really do want causes to their brands to associate the same social values that they have. And to me, that was the catalyst for starting This Shirt Helps. And the thing that This Shirt Helps, I think, does that I'd like to talk about throughout this webinar is making and this is something I think Roost does incredibly well also, is making the messaging very simple for the consumer to understand how they can help and how it does matter. So we created This Shirt Helps with that firmly in mind, where one shirt equals a very specific thing. One shirt equals 3 trees planted, or a year of clean water, or a month of education. Something people can stop and say, this is what I did when I participated, and they got something they already wanted. They got a great product at a great value. So those are the kinds of things that we look for as well, and I think you and I both are seeing a lot of in the market.
Yeah.
Why don't you? I think that's a great segue too. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? What you obviously have that macro view at being at Roost with the 200. Right. How many brands does Roost have now, by the way?
So Roost represents about 300 brands and almost 10,000 SKUs at this stage, and we're growing rapidly. And you just touched on something. Thank you for sharing your story, because it's funny, man. I listened to what you talk about with Blake founding Tom's, and when I was an undergrad at USC. He came in and spoke and had just sold his first 2,000 pairs, and I remember being in the audience listening to him speaking and being inspired by this business model where you can make a social impact and create a good business. And then the big catalyst for me was very similar to yours, as I was leaving the commodities world, kind of jaded and soul searching about what I would want to be really passionate about and believe in and dedicate my life to. There's Blake, and he's talking about how he's giving away his 500,000 pairs of shoes on a AT&T commercial, and it was the same aha moment that I had that you had, which was this was someone's crazy idea, and through perseverance, execution, maybe a little bit of luck, but the right place, right time, right product that struck a chord with the generation. He has been able to build something phenomenal that is not just his biggest legacy is not even just how many pairs of shoes he's given away. It's really the generation that he's inspired to create social impact businesses. And so, at Roost, we have that unique view. We review thousands of brands a year. And the things that we look at and see from a macro trend perspective in all forms are how are brands authentically integrating cause into their business model DNA, not as a marketing campaign, but as a fundamental way of them doing business, as a cost of their goods sold. And those are the businesses. There's a difference between cause marketing and cause integration. And the analogy that I use for that is that cause marketing is a layer of makeup. You can take it on, you can take it off. You can change it how you want, by day, by week. Cause marketing is that you usually have a flight date, a beginning and an end. Cause integration is a forethought. It is what This Shirt Helps does. You guys started a shirt company to create a superior quality product in the market that fundamentally gives back. And that's exactly what we look for. And so when we are screening companies, we look for that first and foremost. Is it marketing or integration? And once we understand that it's integrated, we say, well, what's now the quality of the product? And I think that's a really important point. Because in today's world, what's happening, and the only reason that we're able to have the revolution that we are having, is because it's a consumer-driven paradigm shift. And for all of you listeners out there who haven't read this study, it's called Cone Marketing. They did a cause evolution study, Cone Marketing, C-O-N-E, in 2010, that basically proved empirically and quantitatively that millennial, the Gen Y generation, 18 to 35, over 80% would prefer to buy from brands that give back when given a choice. Price and quality are equal. And a really important part of that is it can't just give back and be a really shitty quality product. As consumers, you have to produce a really good, cool, and what we call sexy product in the market that people want. And if it's not, no matter how inspiring or well-intentioned your cause is, people won't buy it, and you won't be able to have a sustainable business model. And so the first rule of social entrepreneurship is create a product that people want, high quality, and then integrate cause into the business in a way that is authentic. Joe, so when you were starting This Shirt Helps, and you knew Blake and Tom's from the beginning, and you kind of had seen this whole story, how did you go about integrating? Because there's tons of models, right? There's the 1-for-1. You can donate a percentage. You could do 1-for-10. There's many different ways that you can give back through business.
Yeah.
How did you choose all of that?
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, and again, to go to the quality part of the conversation as well. I completely, we all agree with that, and it takes away that level of, you don't want people to feel like that there's an ask involved. You want people to get a product they already want. I like to always say that we all want to save the whales, but we don't want to wear a shirt that says "save the" with a picture of a giant whale on it, because it's just not what we're going to wear. We need to give people things that they already want that are high quality. Right. Which is, again, part of the model of This Shirt Helps. That's why we sell a lot of actual just simple blank products, because we know it's something that people buy in quantities regularly. Like, I can wear a really nice, like, James Purse quality black t-shirt 3 days a week. If I wore a Help Haiti t-shirt 3 days a week, people would start to say, okay, we get it, it's a little bit too much. So we wanted things that people need 4 and 5 of, and really, really cool items. As far as who we help and how, we actually didn't want to align with just any specific cause, but we do have a very broad I'd say level of passion in terms of, or interest in terms of helping. A big part of what we believe in is it's not just the actual funding that social enterprise creates, it's the awareness as well. So for us, first we had to vet through, there's 1.3 million philanthropies in the US approximately right now. So there's a lot, obviously, and there's a lot that people will probably argue aren't as effective as others or aren't doing as great a job for all kinds of reasons, but there's a ton of amazing ones out there. Once we actually determined some broad areas of things that we were all passionate about, because I think it's really important that you align with your core values. The areas that we cared about were all basic human rights, water. We definitely felt education, of course, that ties in very dramatically. Environmental issues, disaster relief. Once we looked at those things, we started diving deeper into the organizations that were out there, and we started asking them, if they could give us unit metrics. And this is something I know you and I both feel really strongly about. We started asking them all, like, okay, there's a very important psychological connection. If you can say, if we can donate X amount for the sale of one shirt, it equals something specific. So once we found organizations that we believed in firmly, that we thought were doing an amazing job, that also had, the ability and the efficiencies of scale or just, properly run business models to provide, adequate services for the amounts that we could donate per shirt, it made it like a pretty much a no-brainer. The last piece for us, and again, this is just going to be, I think, case by case in terms of what type of business you're starting and what you want to tie it to, was I personally determined at that point in my life that what mattered most to me was I want to be able to travel the world and help people. I want to be able to see, what needs to change and how we can affect it and how we are continuing to affect it. So for us, we wanted to be able to go and work with organizations on the ground and be able to come back and explain to consumers how their purchase actually helped and made a difference. Yeah. So to have that level of transparency, especially in this digital day and age, is so critically important. So those were all pretty big factors in how we chose our current partners.
No, that's great, man. And at Roost, everything, it's so inspiring to hear that from you, because everything that you're saying is 100% accurate to where the market is and what consumers want. As a general rule of thumb, the things that we've seen is that shoppers want to give back, but if it's difficult to either A, understand what a company's doing, or B, they don't like the quality, they don't have an attention span. We live in an ADD world where you have 3 seconds or less to get someone's attention and get them really excited about what you're doing, and then even better, empower them with the viral 140 characters or less that they're going to tell their friends when they're rocking your product. And so at Roost, we call it, you said, hey, we're going to choose unit impact over monetary impact, and we're going to say for every X purchase you make, this impact. We call that actually the impact statement. And when you're shopping in Roost, every brand has a 140 character impact statement built into that shopping experience to help everyday people like us understand what that company is doing on a high level headline style format. And it's a pretty simple formula. For every X purchase you make, brand makes Y impact. And that's really important because it helps us understand as consumers what that purchase means today. Shoppers don't generally respond well to saying when a company says we donate 10% of proceeds, 50% of profits, $10, $1, 50 cents. It doesn't matter. The monetary thing actually takes them away from the focusing on the impact and starts getting them to question, is that a lot? How much is it? All of those sorts of things. And truthfully, every brand is different. Every brand has to be able to make strong returns and have it make sense for their business, but also build it in to their cost of goods sold of doing business so that it makes sense financially. If you give away too much, you can't give back. You won't be around, right? If you give away too little, it can hurt your credibility. So there's that kind of like happy medium of understanding how to build it into your cost of goods sold of doing business, so you can focus on the core of vitals of scaling and growing your businesses, and then communicating that in a eloquent way to everyday shoppers in a way that gets them excited.
No, definitely. And just to kind of add to what you were saying about how to engage consumers, not only do percentages not seem to make anybody move or make the needle move because they don't really understand it. It's interesting, that statistic about 80% plus of millennials carrying that there's cause association with the brand that they support, that the same percentage, almost, it's about 75%, I think, in the last study I saw, says that most of the cause-related brands out there, people don't understand how they work. So that's a high percentage of people not understanding what they're trying to do. One of the examples I like to use, Project Red has been a highly successful campaign for a very long time. But when you ask people, most people don't even understand what they do. And that's tragic because it is a great operation. It's just not very well, I think, presented to the public.
So actually, this is a good opportunity for people watching. Tell a little bit about what Project Red has done, because I think it's important for aspiring social entrepreneurs or even established social entrepreneurs to understand the ecosystem around us. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it is hard. Again, they're harnessing consumer power and fashion and celebrity association to help fight the epidemic that is AIDS and HIV worldwide, and they've had a massive impact worldwide to date. I don't know what the latest statistics are, but I know it's phenomenal. What they're doing is just it's amazing. But again, a lot of it's lost in translation. I think this is actually a great time to talk about. I guess you touched on it briefly. The message itself of what you're trying to do is very, very important, but also making it make sound business sense is even more important. And to explain that, I think a little bit more in depth, what I think people get tripped up on is people want to come out and say, oh, we donate 50% or 100% or all these really high numbers. And if you can't actually maintain that from a business standpoint, then you have nothing. That means if you go out and raise $100,000 and then give it all away, then you have no operating costs to continue your business cycle. So I think what people need to do is realize that there's a lot of very effective ways that are all different amounts, and the monetary aspect isn't necessarily as important as the effect, the actual impact itself, which is why I think you and I both really gravitate toward the term impact more than anything, because it's the one thing that isn't measurable that should be, because right now, if you look at how most philanthropies are rated in the ranking system and or social enterprises themselves, they should be ranked based on the actual impact. Like you said, if you took the impact of Tom's and used up the entire domino effect that they've had, the satellite, businesses that they've created. I mean, it's phenomenal, the effect,
Right.
the amount of impact. But if
Right.
you actually just said how many kids have shoes and went to school, it's probably not so great. But still, that's kind of, I think, an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and so it's really important, and it's something that I'm very passionate about and not shy about talking about. So I write for Inc.com occasionally on this, and I wrote an article about this, about how to integrate cause into your cost of goods sold from kind of like a nitty-gritty standpoint. But the whole idea is that every business is different, and as operators of our businesses, we need to know the touch points and the KPIs, the key performance indicators of what works, what doesn't, and what are our cost of goods sold of doing that business, and understanding what it takes to actually run the business. At that point, we can then understand how do we effectively integrate a cause that we're passionate about or believe in into the cost of goods sold from the beginning, so it's not felt as an incremental cost, but it's actually built in, and you can, it's not that you make something more expensive in the marketplace as compared to your competitors, but it's literally built into your cost of goods sold of what it is you're giving. And take, for example, a great nonprofit organization that we both are friends with and have done some work with Pencils of Promise, right? And what Adam Braun has been able to do over there. So we know, so if you're like, okay, $25 donation, that's great, and we can monetize and think about what $25 gets us. But what he's been able to do is break it down to say $25 provides a year's worth of schooling for one child in need. It's a much more powerful statement that we can visualize, right? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, really, that's the main result of all these studies that we've all come across, and we all know it personally. Like, you can't talk about these things in the aggregate and then expect people to understand their personal ability to affect change. You can't say there's 1 billion people that don't have clean water or they're lacking sanitation or all of those things, and then say, hey, buy this $20 item and it's going to affect a percentage somehow. You have to be able to break it down and say, don't talk about 1 billion people. Say, if you do this one thing, you're going to affect a child for a year. That's amazing. Now you've got people actually thinking about what they affected, because if you go into the situation and it appears hopeless, then people don't even feel like they need to participate. But if you go into a situation and say, well, we affected these people, and I can give you a really strong example. We went to Haiti, obviously, with Waste for Water. I think you remember that trip, right? And we did filter distributions there. And it was a really powerful experience, just because you walk into areas, like there's an area in Haiti called Cité Soleil that's 500,000 people that they have no running water, no electricity, no sewage, no police, no medical. I mean, it's very much, you can't really get much worse than that. And that amount of people, when you come in, we've got hundreds of filters that can service 20, 30, 40 people, sure. Definitely can't solve the whole problem for clean water in this community, but you don't not provide the filters. We're going to help the people that we can, and hopefully continue to do so and take chunks at it, and so on and so on. But by knowing that we can affect groups of people, it just makes it that much easier to do the work. So that's really what the message of Adam Braun really, he did an amazing job with that.
I 100% agree, and you're kind of cascading into a good topic here as well. And there's a lot more to be learned about building in cause into the cost of goods sold of your business. But the kind of the summary on that is, know what levers pull your business, know how to build it in. When you pick a nonprofit that you work with, or if you're going to go do the impact yourself, know what those hard costs are, so that it makes sense for your business. If you start to scale it and it's all out of whack, and it doesn't work from an economic standpoint, and you're out of business, it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I think would be really cool to just, and then we could probably move into a couple more categories, but there's a couple things I think are really cool to talk about, and that's whether or not, what type of, social good your company does. You can work with existing organizations, like, for instance, the Pencils of Promise, that have an amazing platform that's already been vetted and works well. Or you can set up your own, or you can work with a more localized project. It really just depends on what your product speaks of. As long as you're explaining it well so the public knows, and as long as you're giving people a product they already need, so they don't feel like you're asking them to buy something that they don't actually want, I think it's a win-win. As long as you can make that
Absolutely.
part work. So.
And there's different types of impact giving models. And so, for example, and I know This Shirt Helps does a similar sort of thing, is that yes, you give money through your purchases, but you also donate and volunteer your time to causes and your resources and your network. So, for example, with Roost, for the last 3 years, we've been teaching social enterprise to low-income kids throughout the Los Angeles urban community. And that's our program, and there's no endowment, no fund. We donate our time. I embed myself every week, and that's something we're committed to and are passionate about, because we believe that the future social entrepreneurs of tomorrow are today's students, and these kids are amazing. And that's one thing that we do. But we also give and donate to Feeding America. And so for every member who joins Roost, we donate a meal to an American in need through Feeding America. And we've built that into our cost of goods sold of customer acquisition. And we've worked out the financial model to have it make sense for us to do so, not when somebody purchases, but we forward vest the giving, meaning when somebody signs up, we donate, whether they make a purchase or not. And that makes sense for us. It doesn't necessarily make sense for all businesses. And so what's just really important is when people are analyzing how they're going to integrate cause, is to understand the economics and the unit economics around it. And once they get that, then they can back it out into how they communicate it to potential customers.
No, definitely, I agree. I think it's interesting too, because from the business side of things, what we're seeing, and I think that you probably also can speak to this, is the value associated with, I don't even like to call it cause marketing, like you don't either. I think it's just marketing. You should just have such a strong brand. It should be such part of your brand ethos that this is just your marketing. So as we're starting to see the value in it, we're starting to notice that one of the challenges that we have in this burgeoning new field of social enterprise is the lack of access to capital, the lack of understanding of it. But as you and I see, because we do work with the younger generation, schools, and so on, is that every single person, the younger the demographic, the more they want their new business or idea to have a social component. So as investors and as people are starting to see that in general, they're seeing the value associated with it, which is allowing for the growth to take place. And it's still kind of, I think, the wild, wild west in a little bit of a way, because it's still, people are trying to figure out what social enterprise really means and how to define it and keep it in that little box, which I think is an interesting thing to talk about with crowdfunder, and like how we can leverage the fact that we already know the public really wants this type of product.
Yep.
And we're trying to get the business, old school regime, more or less, to understand that as well. I think we had some really cool success stories there. Why don't you share your thoughts about some of the crowdfunding, crowdfunder, crowd impact, some of the things that we're doing with that, so people get an idea of ways we're trying to make it easier for access to capital for social enterprises.
The overarching recurring theme that we hear about problems in the social enterprise world, and I think this is true for any SMB, small medium-sized business or startup, it is access to capital, and it is a huge problem. And unless you have you come from, there's a misnomer, let's put it that way, that unless you have a rich uncle or family member or have access to the venture community, it's just impossible to break into. Well, it's certainly not impossible, but it is hard.
Pretty hard.
But there's also a misnomer that you need to have $1 million to get started. And while it may be true you need to have $1 million to scale at some point, to get started, you need a crazy idea that you're passionate about. You need a crazy ambition and desire to make it happen, and a bare minimum amount of capital to just get things going in some sort of progress. I started Roost with my co-founder for $500, a determination to make this happen, and a passion for what we're doing. We've raised well over $1 million, in the last little bit, and are scaling now and all that stuff. But we started with 500, And I think that's really important because people think that, oh my gosh, my product needs to be perfect. We need to get it to the perfection stage before we get it off the ground. But no, progress is better than perfection. And when you look at sites and companies like Crowdfunder and what they're doing with crowd impact, bringing together a group of social entrepreneurs and giving them in a competition format the ability to win $20,000 for first prize, $10,000 for second prize, and nobody walks away without making new contacts, resources, and all those sorts of things. It's really breaking down a huge barrier to entry for brands and people who want to start and get going and say, well, I don't have the money, or I don't know how, or I don't have the connections. And so that's why I'm really stoked about what Crowdfunder is doing, and certainly with this crowd impact contest. So those sorts of things, anytime you can break down the barriers, psychological or physical, for people to start these types of companies, the ecosystem grows. So Blake broke it down with Tom saying it is possible. Roost is trying to break down the distribution direct-to-consumer channel online. So if you have a great idea, boom, you get on Roost and you now have instant access to a national customer base. And Crowdfunder is trying to really break down the barriers to access to capital for these types of companies. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take kind of a whole industry-wide effort to push this forward.
Yeah, and it's pretty, one of the things that I think we've all agreed on for a long time now is that this is such a viral concept because people want to share this. Like I can go out and buy like an amazing shirt and go, oh wow, this is a great shirt, I love it. I'm not going to tell anybody about it though. But if I go buy an amazing shirt and then see, oh, this shirt actually fed a child or provided clean water or planted some trees, now it's like, I want to tell my friends, wow, this is an amazing product, and it did this really cool thing.
Why though?
That's something that I think.
So here's a question for you, and I want to dive into that because what is it? Because I 100% agree. What's happened now, in your opinion, in this point in time, that makes you want to tell your friends about that T-shirt that gives back?
Well, I mean, it's a feel-good thing. There's a couple of reasons, and this is something that I think is interesting as a topic in terms of psychological, the reasoning, I should say. People do things for different reasons, and whether you're doing it because you truly are more compassionate or you care about those things or you want the feel-good component, it could just be selfish, you want the feel-good component. We actually talk about it even all the way up to the business level of why brands start social enterprises. I'm sure there's brands already that are starting social enterprises because they see the value in having a cause integration, and maybe they actually don't care that much about the cause personally. As long as they're actually doing what they say they're supposed to do, I don't really think it matters. I think as long as the end result is good, then that's really all we really care about. So it's the same to me in terms of why people share. I feel that there's people that right now, and again, these are my opinions, of course, but I feel that there's a lot of people that wear Tom's shoes because they probably want people to know that they wear Tom's because they care. Yeah. And there's people that just wear them because they're in style. There's tons of people that don't even know what they do, I guarantee that, right? So it runs the gamut. As long as we all know that what's supposed to happen is happening, then I don't think it matters. But the fact that it is a viral story, what makes something like crowd impact so, incredibly alluring, I should say, to potential new brands is if this was just another tech startup type of contest. We've seen these, obviously I love the 500 startups and all the startup kind of contest models because they do breed innovation, spawn innovation. But this is something that I think takes it that next step, because when people hear about something that affects positive social change and it's a cool product, it's just, sky's the limit because people want to talk about it because they feel good about it. And then you get removed buyer dissonance. If I go buy something that I really like and it actually did something well, I can tell you, and I'm sure you know it from Roost as well, that the return rate on social products is very low in comparison to industry standard because people don't want to say, what am I going to take back the meal I gave a child because my shirt doesn't fit? No, I'm going to go give it to my other friend. I'm going to buy another one because I believe in this mission. So that's important.
It is important, and I think you touched on it. I mean, we are at a really exciting point in time in history where it is cool to be socially conscious. And it is, I think you said it earlier, the younger you get in generation, the cooler it gets to have a social consciousness in your DNA. Gen Y, 18 to 35, and then they call them Gen Z, anything kind of 18 and under. It's just in how they view the world.
What do we do after Z, by the way? I feel like we're running out of,
we start all over again. It's done double A.
I'm feeling really old, but I remember that.
I mean, here's the great part, though, is while it's driven by a generation or a couple generations, this transcends, right? So this is a mentality thing. And yes, not all members of Gen Y share this. And that doesn't mean nobody in Gen X or Boomers look at this as well. We're just kind of, we're talking in macro trends.
So let's just talk about one more thing, obviously. As you know, we're in the process of launching Listen headphones. Listen headphones, actually, we have an amazing story. They're all reclaimed wood headphones, and for every pair we sell, we help restore hearing to a child in a deaf school. Why headphones? Because we're trying to make social enterprise the coolest thing ever, so we need to make really cool products that are driven by the younger market. We want it to be, we don't want to create the traditional philanthropy product where it's the stuff you get at the giveaway at the gala dinner with the old person sitting around a bunch of $500 a plate meals. We want cool, we want young, cool, hip. So
I feel that
we want more people to make products like this that then will breed generations that will solve world problems for generations to come instead of the opposite. So
you named it right there. I mean, the whole motto and mantra of Roost is that we want to bring sexy back to giving back, and it has to be a cool product. It has to be cool shit that's making a difference in the world, and we say that unequivocally because when you talk about kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what people look at and what's important to them, they're looking for things that make them feel good, look good, feel good. All those sorts of things are an important part of their consumer behavior decision. And a product, for example, like Listen headphones, which I'm a huge fan of, they are hitting the nail on the head. They're innovating in a vertical that is tremendously popular right now. And they've taken the model of headphones and they've really flipped it on its side and said, we don't just want to have an empty transaction. You put something on your ear and you're rocking some famous person's name. We want to put something on your ears that stands for something and that means something in the world. It says something about who you are. And that's the exciting thing about kind of the whole industry right now is that the shirts, whether it be the headphones or whether it be, the watches, the wood watch that plants a tree for everyone you buy, they're unique and they reflect my personality, and I get to talk with my friends about them, and it says something about who I am as a person, and it's a really great loop that is pushing this whole industry forward in a major way.
Yeah, and it's becoming more holistic in general. We're starting to see, and again, I don't think you should let something stop your end result, because if something is good, don't let, great be the enemy of good, like you said. But there are more holistic solutions now. We're getting products that are organic, they're made with fair labor practices, they're made in communities that are benefiting from the actual product sales themselves, and so on and so on. So we're starting to see more holistic approaches across the board in the supply chain of all this manufacturing of social product, which is great. And again, crowdfunder and crowd impact, this is such a viral story that's what makes this online community so important, is because really we are talking about, this is something where we can't wait for the leaders in business. This is like politics. It's like you don't wait for legislation to happen proactively. Legislation's generally reactive. This is the same thing. We need the public. We need the public to move in mass so that business leaders can then react and then start to fund and see how this is beneficial for everyone. So by having these online communities and forums for people to show support in both just their social manners, whether it's through social channels and actually through financial capabilities, just actually participate in crowdfunding campaigns. So
financially, awesome. Yeah, it is. It's really exciting. And you talked about legislation and how they're always the last to react to kind of a massive trend. In the last 5 years, B Corporation, B Labs has been pushing this idea of the benefit corporation, and now I believe 13 or 14, 15 states actually have adapted legislation to recognize a legal entity of a benefit corporation to say we are out to make a difference and a profit. And so this is a trend that's not going away. Patagonia is a B corporation. Ben and Jerry's a B corporation.
Well, those are great examples because those are companies that have great products already. Right. It isn't a company that was built around a cause. It was like we were going to buy that anyways. And now we know that they're even cooler than we thought because they do something amazing besides that. So super great.
It's exciting, man. There's no question that we are fundamentally at a crossroads in history of how business is going to be conducted in the future. Big companies cannot avoid this anymore. It's driven through consumers and consumerism and through a generation, the millennials, that spend $200 billion a year. They influence another $400 billion in spending, and that's just in the U.S. And when you're talking about that massive of dollars on the line, companies like Pepsi are reacting and putting their Pepsi refresh campaign, and they react slower than entrepreneurs, but it's happening all around us. And those who don't integrate cause, and I'm not just talking about doing just marketing. I think the long term of this is all about the integration. If you don't integrate cause as a new business, quite frankly, you just won't be competitive over as your business grows.
It'll be a necessity, and that's you could. To go back to Crowd Impact, if you had a contest like Crowd Impact 10 years ago, you would have probably got a very small amount of capital, very small group of investors in the room. We're talking about, 30 grand in prizes and another 100 million in capital in the room, and that's only going to grow. So these are things that I think are really, key telling points that it's already happening, and
no question.
The younger, more fluid businesses will be able to really take advantage and position themselves to A, make a strong company, but B, create a lot of positive change in the world, which is what you're going to care about at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at how Silicon Valley started and scaled and grew and everything, it all was around a series of small wins and building momentum on top of yourself, and then having access to capital and having people being able to fund ideas that could take risks and fail or succeed, and hoping that you have more successes than failures. But the idea is that failure is a part of the ecosystem. And Crowd Impact, what they're doing right now, and with Crowdfunder's overall platform, I'm really excited to see the group of entrepreneurs that come out and share their ideas with the world. Some are going to win some big money, some are going to get some big investors, and some are going to get some phenomenal exposure. But it's not until we bring this community together as one that we can, continue to build the momentum on top of itself. So, if you're a listening, social entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur with an idea, definitely look into joining into this, this competition, and Joe and I will be there.
And the community as a whole, obviously, absolutely. Not just the competition. This is something where it's a significant amount of resources for social enterprise, and I think that people, we're not going to do this alone, but we're definitely going to do it together. So let's all work together.
I love it. No, it's great, and I guess one of the last things that I would want to leave a person with who's listening to this and this conversation is that, just like you said, that great is the enemy of good, and progress is better than perfection. And if you have an idea that you think is inspiring and that is cool, focus on quality, focus on the unit economics of how you're going to make impact and make a profit. Get out there and talk to real customers, get feedback, and don't ever what you are never going to be able to tell the market what to do. The market tells you. And just get out there and try it. And if you fail, don't worry about it. Fail forward.
Exactly. I'll just add to that on my goodbye here that number one, I started a business, ran a business for 10 years that was relatively successful, but it wasn't very glamorous. Once I started This Year It Helps, within months of the inception of that company, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, wow, you inspired me to do something, to make a difference, to change. And that is worth its weight in gold. Just knowing that we've already affected people and we've made that kind of a difference is so huge. So if you're thinking about starting a social enterprise, or if you're worried about how it's going to turn out, just jump in, do it. You'll never regret it. I guarantee it. So
no, that's great advice, Joe.
And if you fall on your face, Brent, like I always say, like you said about falling on your face, even when you fall on your face, you're still moving forward. So don't worry about it.
And that's the truth. And you just got to get started. Don't let it. You break down those doors that you think are barriers. And if you have any other questions, you can always hit me up on Twitter. My personal hashtag is Brent Freeman CEO or @Roost. If you haven't joined Roost, go check us out. If you need inspiration for companies and the different types of models, look at some of our brands. We are very accessible and always happy to help.
Likewise, and I'm @JoeHuffLA, and also you can reach me at Crowdfunder, of course, so reach out there as well.
Perfect.
So it's been a pleasure, guys. We really enjoyed being part of this webinar, and hopefully this will be a more regular occurrence.
Joe, it's always great talking, man. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but next time.
Awesome. All right, Brent. Take care. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care, guys.